Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien on Monday, February 7th, 2022. Sitting in for Paul Harvey this morning on YouTube. Stand by for today's commentary. And today's commentary is on rubbish authors. Rubbish is a term that the British interpret as meaning authors people that don't get their way. Okay, when you say rubbish, it means throw it away, or you didn't measure up to what you should be. By rubbish authors, these are people who wrote stuff but didn't quite get to the top of the line. Not like Dickens or John Steinbeck or Ernest Hemingway did. And one of the guys in the British side that did this was a guy named W.L. George. And he was an aspiring author, as we called it here in America. He published, or tried to publish, a lot of things, but didn't work out. People just didn't like his books for one reason or another. So he supplemented his income and made money publishing to different publications, tabloids of today, if you consider them. But he published to companies like probably the Saturday Night Evening Post in America and regular newspapers and British in America. They would publish his articles on a basis and pay him some money, enough for him to get around and sustain himself for a little bit. Not the millions of dollars that you got the books and that were paid by the big authors back then. And one such publication here in the United States, the New York Herald, in May 7th, 1922, published an article by Mr. W.L. George where he explained his vision of how the world would be in 2022 versus 1922. And he said that the trains and ocean liners would be superseded by the airplane. That in our time, 2022, people would ride comfortably on the airplane, plush seatings, a lot of food, and all the other amenities that would be around on the train in his time in 1922, or ocean liners in 1922. But they would get from New York to, say, London or England or France in 8 hours. And back then, the closest you got was 4 days, something like that. Was the fastest ocean liner that could do it. 5 years later, the Spirit of St. Louis made it over there in 33 and a half hours. Yeah, but it took a long time before the airplanes would get there, and it took them 7 or 8 hours. In the late 50s, and from now till then, you haven't changed much on the time. Your airplanes have changed. You become faster jets, but not faster than 7 or 8 hours. Except for the Concorde, which did it in 3.5 hours. But if you rode in a Concorde, that wasn't exactly a plush ride. Anyway, so he was right on that. The trains, well, today you got Amtrak. Ugh, yuck. Anybody who's ridden Amtrak can say, yuck, right? Do you remember the old trains with the Pullman cars, and you had the Zephyrs and the Super Chiefs and all the other trains that ran all over the United States before 1971? Yeah. And the ocean liners. In his time, he was 10 years past the Titanic, 7 years past the Lusitania. But the big guys were coming aboard in the next couple of decades. The Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mary, the Ile-de-France, the Normandy, and of course the SS United States. and people would flock to them, not as much as they did back in the early 20th century with the Olympic and the Mauritania and the Lusitania. Those were the heyday of the ocean liners, but they still had a lot of passengers that carried on Queen Elizabeth and Queen Mary, and the only one left is the Queen Mary. She's still at a hotel over in Long Beach. The SS United States is running away in Philadelphia. I don't know what happened to the Ile-de-France or the Normandy, but they are probably dead by now. And he was right on that. Also, he said that communications would be fast with the wireless telephone. Yeah, wireless telephone. Yeah. Well, today we got the cell phone, which I'm doing my video on here, and you notice that it's more than a cell phone, it's more than a telephone, it's a communications device with video in it. He foresaw that too. He foresaw movies being in color and talking. 1922, it was silent. The first talkie came in 5 years later in 1927, The Jazz Singer. But he foresaw this, and he said that movies would be on small screens and big screens. And we have televisions, which you call the small screens, movie theaters, which you got big screens, and now you got cell phones, which, it's a small screen. So Mr. George was right on that. There was a lot of things he was right, there was a lot of things he was wrong. But for the most part, he was more right than wrong. As opposed to guys like Jules Burns and H.G. Wells and other guys like that wrote about the time 100 years, 50 years from them. Mr. Orwell with his 1984, as opposed to Animal Farm. 1984 wasn't exactly what he had in mind, but it was close. Today, 1984 is closer than when 1984 was around, wasn't it? Yeah. With all the stuff that we got today, that the government's trying to get you to do this and do that, and think this way and think that way. It's interesting. So, if you have a chance, go to the internet, look up the New York Herald publication, May 7th, 1922, and look up the article by W.L. George, and write me back at the Alien on this YouTube channel, and let me know what you think. Sitting in for Paul Harvey today, it's your favorite alien. Good day.